Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR, a weekly podcast where we explore the forces shaping our roles today, from new technologies, shifting expectations to tightening budgets. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors Foresight for their support of this episode. In the age of AI and ever-increasing complexity, Foresight have built a beautifully simple and powerful tool that generates an accurate workforce plan with only 5 minutes of line manager time each quarter. All they need to do is log expected growth, known levers, suspected levers, and that's everything from performance to flight risks, when Jimmy turns up in a suit for the first time ever. And their clever tech will turn everything into a clear map, complete with interventions that HR can take to reduce churn and an automated feed into your applicant tracking system so that your recruitment and talent acquisition team can get a rare lead on recruitment. Are you looking for that one easy change that makes a huge impact on your business? Then go to theforesight.co.uk and mention that you found out about them through the show, and you'll get a Friends of the Podcast discount. Great. Now on with the show. Today's episode is going to be a real treat. We're going to do a real deep dive into a trend that we talk about a lot on this show, which is this sort of growing trend of HR and people functions needing to become really transformational. So today we've got Elin Filipp on the show. She's the Chief People Officer at Puzzle, and she was hired with a remit of changing their HR function from operational to being a real engine of driving business strategy. We all know that if you put the right people in the right company at the right time, you can make a huge amount of change in just 1 year. So let's see what happened. Elin, welcome to We Need to Talk About HR.
Nice to be here.
Well, you're about a year into your role, just over with Puzzle. And I wonder if you could sort of talk us through what it was that they wanted to achieve by bringing you into their organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say this year has gone by so fast, but I really love it here. It's the best job I have ever had. But when I started talking to them, I wasn't actually really looking for a job. Someone in my network recommended this. I met with them, and I just fell in love with the company and the culture and the people. So basically, the assignment that I got from the CEO was that it's a very happy and healthy company, but what they want to do is go from an operative HR function to more of a strategic HR function. So that was kind of the setup. And then I started. I tried to put some time into getting to know the company. I did a tour. I visited all the offices. I tried to meet with the heads of departments, a lot of managers to kind of get a feeling for where we're at. And that's basically how I started. I set my plan based on that. So it was very, very wide to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, really, really broad brief. What were the sort of immediate challenges that jumped out to you as something that sort of needed quick priority?
Yeah, something we talked about already before I started was, for one, the operative, but it was a lot about the leadership and the managers. So Puzzle has had a lot of internal promotions and a lot of people that have been there for very many years. So they had an extended management team and a lot of internal promotions, but they hadn't worked with it in a strategic way. So one of the things was let's look into the managers, and going from operative to strategic, a lot of it was about business partnering. So one of the first things we started to do was redefining the role of the HR to more of a business partner and how we work with the managers. So that was very important for us to make sure to work with the managers. We kind of call it the teach a man to fish policy. Instead of HR being operative and reactive, we try to make sure to, even if it takes longer, coach the managers, try to make them understand, try to show them how it's done. And that will be an investment in time, but it will be so worth it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that makes sense. I think one of the things that we've spoken about on the show before is the power of having a really strong management core and on having a good sort of well-taught management methodology in an organization, sort of helping to elevate business leadership and the sort of HR people function as well. So I'd love to find out a little bit more around the steps that you've taken with that management team to make them self-sufficient?
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap about like being a support function. You want to be helpful, you want to be nice, and it's like, let me take care of that for you. So you have to be kind of disciplined to make that shift. So a part of it is redefining what we do, but also like we need to show our value. Like they're not going to listen to us if we don't give them a reason to. You don't have to tell us because we have to know when you're forced to brief HR. You should tell us because you want our input, because we have given good input in the past. So a lot of it is proving ourselves as well. So we're not coming in and demanding it. We're coming in, we're offering it over time. That turns into something like, and I've seen that a lot of times they want to talk to us now. It's not like, oh, I have my one-on-one with HR. I have to see if they're okay with this. Now it's kind of, it's earlier. It's much earlier now. I've been considering doing this. Do you have an input? And then we can kind of point them in the right direction instead of then coming to us and being like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. And then it's like, okay, but that doesn't work legally or culturally or whatever. So we're very much more of a partner.
That's so good. It's like anything, right? Like any piece of work, if you're able to input much earlier, it's so much easier to have a bigger impact on what happens with much less effort, right?
Yeah, now it's kind of more pointing them in the right direction. It's like we're there early on, we're doing this together, we're supporting them, instead of like we're the support function executing their decision. No, we're a part of this. We're doing this together. So I think that's very important.
That's really cool. And just to understand the role that you're playing with them, you mentioned coaching them. So I don't know, let's say someone's got a performance issue in their team and they come to you and they're looking for an early steer on how they should intervene. What are the sort of what's the sort of advice and resources that you provide them with?
Yeah, so I always say the earlier the better. So we had a really extensive management training, and I think I said this a million times because I think it's one of the most important things. So the earlier you are, the easier it is to correct. And the only bad thing that can come out of that is that, like, if you address it too early, before it's a big problem, then you might solve it super easily. And if you don't, you get documentation if you ever have to turn it into a case for dismissal or something. So a lot of the times the managers are not good at documenting it. And also they're like, oh, I want to give them a chance and so on. But intervening early doesn't mean like, are you going to be put on a PIP and you're going to be terminated tomorrow? Intervening early is actually, it's nicer for the employee. They get a chance to do something. So it's kind of a win-win. It's better legally, it's better for the manager, it's better for the employee, and also for the relationship. Like you shouldn't come to a point where something isn't working out and the employee is surprised. It should be like, yeah, I agree. Like we have come to the end of the road here. We have talked about this for months.
It's funny you mentioned a PIP. You know, it obviously stands for Performance Improvement Plan, but so many people think of it as, well, let's do all the admin we need to do to let this person go.
Yeah.
But really, if you're getting in early, you can put them on a PIP, and it's literally, let's improve your performance.
Yeah. And I think that it might be a bit different between the different regions we operate in. But for me, I don't see PIP as the first step for dismissal. Like if you do it early enough, it's a good way to be super clear. Like you're going to get so much extra attention. We're going to be super concrete in our feedback. We're going to set goals. We're going to follow up closely. And then hopefully everything works out. And then again, if it doesn't, we have the documentation of having tried.
That's really interesting. So how would you describe your 1 year in with your management team? How would you describe them? Are they on board? Are they super proactive? Have you been successful there or still a way to go?
No, I see such a big difference, and the team as well. So when I started, the whole team was there. So I didn't hire any of them, but they're the best. So I'm very glad to have them. And I think for them, they tell me that it's a huge difference. So previously it was kind of, like I said before, it's like they come in and it's like, can you help me execute this decision that I've already made? And now they come in way before. It's like, can I get your input because I'm considering doing something? And then we can say like either it's a good idea, we should go there, or we can say, okay, let's take a step back. What are you trying to achieve? Maybe we can try this and this and this instead. So I would say the managers have a lot more trust in HR. That's kind of my impression of it.
Well, that is a real win after only 15 months. How about your team? So obviously you've gone into a mainly operational, admin, reactive function. I'm sure that's overly reductive. I'm sure that there were some fantastic people in the team before, but have you increased the team? Have you focused on sort of training and reskilling within your own team, culture change? What did you do to the incumbent team when you joined?
So for them, like they weren't really a team. So because we are distributed, so they are not in the same region. So there's 2 in the UK and 2 in Bulgaria, but otherwise everyone is spread out. So my manager actually described it as like they were a bunch of people reporting to the same person, but they weren't really a team. So I think that has been like one of the biggest things. So very early on, I said that I wanted an HR meetup, and they had never had that before. So some of them had never met each other. We actually had it in London, so we flew everyone in, and then we had a strategy session. I already had kind of an idea of what I wanted to do with HR function, but we had like 2 days. We had workshops, we had discussions. They had a lot of good input because they had been here longer than me. So they had so much knowledge that I didn't have. So we puzzled together like the first HR strategy, and also like talked about what is HR, what is it not, and decided together how we're going to work as a team, how much are we going to share, how often are we going to meet, and like what is our reason, and then the vision, like how do we want the HR function to be. And I'm very happy that all of them were very on board with making the shift to more of business partnering. And then we presented that to the entire company, not just the managers. We think it's important that everybody knew this. So that was kind of the main idea. Like I had some hypothesis, but I wanted everyone to be on board. Like we're doing this together. It's not just me. Like I can have all of these ideas, but if they're not helping me pull in that direction, it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, many hands make light work, and when you've got someone that doesn't believe in the end point, that's can be really damaging. So let's talk about. I'd love to. So you obviously came into a team of like 4 people, and sort of brought them together into something more cohesive. Looking back now, if you take this as a sort of point in time, again, how happy are you in the distance that they've come since you started this program?
No, it's amazing. I'm so happy with them. All of them they're very different, and I love that so much. So actually, one of the company values are stronger together, but that's all something we already talked about in the HR team in the first meetup. Before that was our value. So everybody has their own background, and especially like we have one HR manager from Bulgaria and like one from the UK. They have so different cultural background, but also they're different in age and how long they have worked. Everybody has different perspective. So what we decided on that HR meetup was, when we are in this group, you represent your regions and give us these kind of different opinions, and we want you to disagree. But then when we have made a decision and you go out in your region, you're representing the HR team. So I'm very happy with that kind of setup. So we have decided that it's good to disagree. And it's actually so helpful, because you kind of like things I wouldn't have thought about. Like I'm sitting there in Oslo, like deciding on a strategy, but that doesn't at all work in Denmark. Mm. Then I have someone telling me that would not work. So yeah, I'm very happy with all the different perspectives they're providing.
Yeah, that must be fascinating because I mean, you're relatively, I guess, medium-sized business, right? Sort of 200-300 people.
Yeah.
So, but you still have really significant presence in multiple geographies, right? To need those business partners in all of the different regions. So you must, even at this time when you're shaping strategy, shaping policy, it must be fascinating to get those insights into regional.
Yeah, no, it is very different, but a lot of it is at least similar. But then we have to do some kind of tweaks. But I always say, and I have to repeat this so many times to managers, to employees, and to my team, we want it to be harmonized, but harmonized does not mean the same. So, for example, if we're talking about benefits, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, but it's so much more generous in Sweden." Yeah, that's because the government in Sweden provides this and this and this. So if we look at like the industry average, it should be as nice to work for Puzzle compared to a competitor in Sweden and in London and in Sofia. But that doesn't mean we should have the same benefit, because that doesn't make sense. So you kind of have to adapt. Like if we're going to do business in this country, then we adapt to the laws and the praxis and whatever's usual in that country. But yeah, you have to kind of repeat it, because a lot of times people, I saw they have 1 more week of vacation. Yeah, you can take it up with the government.
Are you in America?
Yeah, no, not America.
Well, that's another kettle of fish completely.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of glad that we're not, because that would be way different. Maybe it would be a good challenge, but now I think it's enough challenge with Brexit and every other region for us being in the European Union and UK not being in the European Union. It's fine. It's usually similar, but yeah, it was easier when it was the same.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
So you've got your 2 big things that you did first, right? You got your managers on board and all pulling in the same direction. You've got your HR team all on board and pulling in the same direction. What were the next big chunks of work that you needed to do?
Yeah, so the first was redefining what HR is and making sure that everybody was on board with that. So a lot of thought went into that communication. We wanted the entire company to know that, the employees, the managers, everybody. And then we set up manager one-on-ones. So everyone in the HR team has like their managers in their region that they have reoccurring calls with, just to make sure that we have a good collaboration. And before we kind of got to that point where we are now, that they are seeking our input, we wanted to make sure to have those calls and provide like benefits in those calls to kind of kickstart that. And then after that, the next step was our 6-month leadership program. So we decided we wanted to invest in the managers. If we're going to have this approach, the teach a man to fish approach, we have to make sure that they have the right training. And as I said, we had a lot of internal promotions. So then it's our responsibility to give them the tools they need.
Great. And that seemed to have gone really well, because obviously, I mean, we spoke before, it's had a huge impact on your ENPS.
Yeah. I think we almost double it. I think more than double it. So when you look at the numbers, I recently put that together. Our turnover has gone down significantly and our employee engagement has gone up significantly. So I think it's very important that HR is measured. It's so easy to fall into the trap of, I hear people say this and this is the general opinion. But when you actually put numbers to it, it's so much easier to prove the value of the organization. And as well, like if you want to make investments, like I want to provide some training, I want to buy a new HR system, or for our example, like buying a pulse survey, I have the stats to prove like, why is this worth it? Like I can make a business case.
I'm really glad you brought up technology. A big hobby horse of mine. Over the year, have you brought in any technology that you found to be helpful on this journey?
Yeah, we brought in a pulse survey, and I'm very happy about that. And I already said that before I started, that I really want a pulse survey, and that's just because I want things to be measured. Obviously, they had an employee survey, they had a yearly one, and then they had a small check-in as well. So they had 2 a year, but one was smaller. But what I want is I want to be able to like zoom out on the organization, and I can see the trends. So for example, is there a region I should put more effort into, or is it maybe a team I should put more effort into? And it's such a good tool for the HR team as well. Like when they have their manager one-on-ones, they can just pull up like the actual opinions of the teams. So we have a monthly pulse survey now, and it's the best tool ever.
Fantastic. Give them a plug.
Yeah. It's Populum.
Populum.
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
Yeah. And I fell for them because they have like a really interesting way to work with the comments. So they have like an AI tool that can analyze the comments for you. And you can also write it in your native language, which is very good because we're in very different regions. And then it still can translate and summarize it for you.
I've just realised that some listeners, call it 15% of listeners, won't know what a pulse survey is. So could you just quickly explain what it is?
Yeah, I had to do this internally as well because they had the yearly survey for a long time. So the yearly survey, it's just a snapshot in time. It's what are people feeling right now. And then if you time it really badly, like after an org change, or you time it really well, like after a kickoff, you get really high or really low scores. But that doesn't really say anything. And as soon as you get the results, they're outdated. So what we have is a pulse survey, so it's monthly. So we get kind of the trend, like is this going up, is this going down? Is there any specific areas that you should look into more? And then we can use it in real time. So it's very different, and it's basically like I can zoom out and see what the company is thinking and feeling.
That's great, and over time as well. That's so powerful. So
yeah.
Have the surveys demonstrated? I'd love to. So we spoke about what's gone well. I'd love to just explore whether the surveys have shown it or not. Whether you've made any mistakes.
Yeah, of course, you always do that. But it's like when you work in tech and have like an agile methodology, it's not a mistake. It's just another iterament. So it's then you adjust and then you try again. So I think mistakes are a part of it, and then you have to readjust. And that's also why I like the pulse survey, because we can kind of see like we made a lot of effort for this team in this region. Can we see a change? So yeah, absolutely. And one of our main areas is strategic alignment. We're still working on that a lot, trying to make sure that the strategy doesn't stay on top, like it goes through the managers to the employees, and everybody can kind of feel meaning in their work. Like I'm doing this, but it leads to the bigger picture. So that's one of the areas we are working on right now, making sure that everybody knows what they contribute with to the strategy.
That's really cool. And I think it's something we're always working on, because, well, I guess every company sort of works on that strategic alignment piece. But we're going through this OKR setting exercise, which we have been on historically. And then the question that we always ask is, how far do we spread this throughout the organization? Because we always ask a question like, do people care?
Yeah.
You don't want to be like setting work for people to do if they don't find the meaning in it.
No, I think a lot of times, especially OKRs, they just feel like admin to people. So you have to do it in a good way. I don't have a magic answer, but I was really impressed. It was a previous manager of mine at an old-time company. When he had the onboarding days, so he wanted to have onboarding days with everybody that started. So we had like maybe once or twice a year. He wanted everybody to answer the questions like, this is what we want to do. This is our vision. How are you contributing to that? And then we had some people that's like, no, I'm just doing finance admin. Okay, but what you do, like, you make sure that the bills go out on time, then we get paid. And like, he wanted everybody to like, okay, how does what you do connect to the ultimate goal? And they had to answer that on the onboarding session. And I really like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think, I do think it's super important. I think maybe we might have to look at revisiting one more time. It's very much on our roadmap of things to do. But I really like the concept of reversing that, and instead of saying, well, this is how you contribute to this, to that, to that, but actually say, just ask the question instead. But it is hard to get to that point, but it's very good. Like if you look at all the measurements, like why do people like to work at a company?
You think like salary and titles and everything, but that's just one part of it. A lot of the surveys actually said, for one, of course, flexibility, but also meaningfulness. So I think if you can do that, it will help your strategic alignment, but also employee retention and engagement. But as I said, this is still something we're trying to figure out how to do it in a good way.
Well, and not least, what you've been focusing so much time on is your relationship with your manager.
Yeah.
It's such a huge part of it. If you had your time again and you could revert, sort of rewind back to your first day, would you do anything differently?
That's a good question. I think maybe not. I think a lot of the times, like maybe I would have wanted to do some things earlier, like for example, the pulse survey, getting that in from day one would have been good. But I think a lot of times things just had to play out. So I'm very happy with the progress we made.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned strategic alignment already, but what have you got planned for the next 12 to 15 months?
Yeah, so I think a big part of it is keep working with the managers and leveraging them, especially for strategic alignment. But then another part is the employee journey and making sure that we work with talent management going forward, because we can see like we have very low turnover. And that's great. But when I look at the pulse survey, the people that have been here for, I think, 3 to 5 years, they score kind of low in development. And I think they are at a crucial point. So like the people that just started, they're happy, they're engaged. The people that have been here a long time, they've kind of settled in, they're stable, they're working. But I think that 3 to 5 year people, like we need to make sure that they want to keep staying, they want to keep developing. We want to offer opportunities for them, because it shouldn't be either I quit or I become a manager. We want to have career development opportunities that's outside of that. So I think that's going to be a very big project for this year.
That's really interesting. One of my previous guests, a guy called Nick Marks, he runs a business called Friday Pulse. It's a pulse survey business. And his perspective, which I really like, is when you're looking at happiness in your organization, it's the people who are kind of okay who are going to kill your performance. Because people who are not unhappy, you'll find out about.
Yeah.
Right? They'll be in a performance review, or they'll be talking to you about being unhappy. People who are really happy, you'll know about. They'll be the one like waving all the flags. They'll be really active over your Teams or Slack communities or whatever it is that you're doing. But the people who are in the middle, that's where the performance delta really comes out. I think uncovering that's such an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and I think like we really want to keep growing, and we have high ambitions in that. But if we're gonna grow, then we need to keep the current employees. So it's up for us to prove that we are a career company. Come here, grow with us. The company grows, and you can grow. So yeah, I think it's very, very important to focus on that.
Fantastic. Well, Elin, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a super interesting conversation. And yeah, good luck with year 2.
Thank you.